It sounds almost crazy. Yet even the greatest religions of the world cannot agree on what the Ten Commandments truly are. Catholics count them one way, Protestants in another, and Judaism in yet another. So then, what are the real 10 words? But here's the most shocking part. There are laws almost identical to the 10 Commandments that were written down hundreds of years before Moses was even born. And in the end, you'll see why this truth could change the way we live, the way we believe, and the way we love one another today. Picture Moses, standing alone. On the heights of Mount Sinai, the desert wind whips through his cloak, his hands holding 2 stone tablets, the law of God. Come up to me on the mountain and stay there, and I will give you tablets of stone. Exodus 24-12. That image has been etched into the human imagination for over 3,000 years. As someone who loves archaeology, I've always wondered, is there any physical evidence for this moment? For more than a century, archaeologists have searched across the Sinai. They looked for traces of millions of Israelites wandering through the wilderness for 40 long years. But they found nothing. No shards of pottery, no tools, no remains of vast encampments. I have led you in the wilderness for 40 years, Deuteronomy 29-5. So why is there no trace? Maybe the number of people was far smaller than the story describes. Or maybe the location itself was not where we think it was. I once stood before an ancient stone stele in a museum, and I wondered, could Moses have held something just like this? I thought I would find answers in the sands of Sinai, but instead, the clues pointed far away thousands of miles into the heart of other civilizations. And what do you think? If 1 million people truly wandered for 40 years, yet left behind nothing, was it a symbol? Or was it a historical event, misunderstood? And if you think this part already unsettles the ground beneath your feet, just wait, because the next part will challenge the very way we count the 10 Commandments. In 1901, a team of French archaeologists uncovered a massive black stone pillar in Iran. Etched upon it was the code of King Hammurabi, carved around 1750 BC. And when scholars translated those ancient lines, what startled the entire academic world was how strikingly similar they were to the 10 Commandments. Hammurabi's code forbids stealing, forbids bearing false witness, forbids adultery. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. Exodus 20:13-16. The same moral principles written into both sets of laws, separated by centuries. Hammurabi declared that the god Marduk had given him these laws to establish justice upon the land. I still remember the first time I read those words. It felt as if I were staring at another version of the 10 Commandments, but born out of a world utterly foreign to Israel. From a black pillar rising in the deserts of Iran to 2 stone tablets lifted on Mount Sinai, law has always been tied to the divine and to power. You might even picture Hammurabi as a kind of Moses of Babylon, receiving law from his God, proclaiming justice in the name of the sun deity. So, did Moses simply copy Hammurabi? I don't believe so. Instead, I think this reveals something far deeper, that across history, humanity has arrived, again and again, at the same moral conclusions. Do not kill, do not steal, do not lie. These principles surface independently in culture after culture because they reflect the basic survival needs of any stable society. The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. Psalm 19-7. Moses did not merely repeat what already existed, he redefined it within a new theological frame, one centered on a covenantal relationship between humanity and one God alone. So then, what makes the 10 Commandments truly unique? That answer lies at the very end. Here's the shocking thing I discovered while studying the different traditions. In reality, there is no single, unified list of the 10 Commandments. I know that sounds almost unbelievable, but let me explain. The original Hebrew text never numbers the commandments. They are written as one continuous passage. The decision to divide them into 10 separate laws was made much later by theologians. I am the Lord your God, Exodus 20:2. In Judaism, this very line is counted as the first commandment because it establishes relationship before it gives rules. Roman Catholic tradition combines "you shall have no other gods" and "you shall not make idols" into a single command, but then divides "you shall not covet" into 2 separate laws. Protestants, on the other hand, split "you shall not make idols" into its own commandment to emphasize the danger of idolatry. Why these differences? Because each tradition seeks to highlight a different moral focus. Catholicism stresses resisting greed. Protestantism stresses resisting idols. Judaism places its weight on the relationship with God. You shall not make for yourself a carved image to bow down to them. Exodus 20:4. This verse is either joined or separated, depending on the tradition, and that has been the heart of the debate. I remember sitting for hours comparing the lists side by side from each faith. It felt like trying to piece together a map of belief, but every version drew the boundaries in a different place. Does that surprise you? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if even the great traditions cannot agree on the list, then which version is the true one? That question still waits for an answer. But we will return to it at the very end. The story becomes even more complicated when the 10 Commandments step out of the church and walk into American politics. I still remember the case in Alabama back in 2003. Chief Justice Roy Moore placed a massive granite monument of the 10 Commandments right in the rotunda of the state Supreme Court. When the federal court ordered its removal, he refused. Thousands of Christians gathered in support, seeing it as a battle for religious freedom. But here's the paradox. Moore had chosen the Protestant version of the 10 Commandments, not the Catholic version, not the Jewish version. He was using the power of government to enforce one particular interpretation of religious law. And that was the moment when the 10 Commandments ceased to be only moral guidance and became a political symbol. Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. Matthew 22:21. The words of Jesus themselves make me wonder, is there truly a clear boundary between faith and power? I remember feeling conflicted. How could something sacred, something holy, be turned into a tool for public dispute? Politicians invoke the 10 Commandments to signal Christian identity, yet many of them cannot even name all 10. One study showed that more than 60% of Americans, even Christians, cannot recall the 10 Commandments in full. Do you remember them all? Try to list them in 10 seconds. If you can't, you are not alone. So then, how can the 10 Commandments serve as the foundation of law if most people do not even know what they say? This leads me to a question, one not easily answered. If Moses were alive in our time with the challenges we face today, what would he write? The world of Moses was a simple agrarian society. Our world is a tangled global network technology, climate change, social media, artificial intelligence. I imagine a commandment about misinformation. We are living in an age where lies travel faster than truth. How many relationships have been broken? How many communities torn apart by nothing more than a sensational headline? You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Exodus 20:16. This command has never felt more urgent than in a time when a single click can shape an entire worldview. Perhaps we need a commandment about the environment. How can we love our neighbor as ourselves if we leave our children and grandchildren a planet in ruins? Or maybe about technology. We have created digital idols, and we bow to them for hours each day. We measure our worth in likes, in shares, in algorithms. I remember once staring at the screen of my phone and I wondered, would Moses have smashed an iPhone the way he once shattered the stone tablets? If you had to write a commandment for the 21st century, what would it be? What in this modern world troubles you the most? We do not need more laws, we need guidance. A moral compass to steer us through challenges the ancients could never have imagined. And maybe, just maybe, that is why the 10 Commandments are still being spoken of 3,000 years later. After this journey of study and searching, I came to realize something important. The historical origins of the 10 Commandments may be far more complex than what we were taught, but that does not diminish their power. These principles have shaped Western civilization for more than 2,000 years. They have inspired movements for social justice, from the abolition of slavery to the struggle for civil rights. Martin Luther King Jr. drew upon the 10 Commandments in his fight for racial equality. Nelson Mandela leaned on them in his stand against apartheid. Not because they believed every historical detail, but because they believed in the timeless moral message. Maybe Moses absorbed moral ideas from the cultures around him. Maybe the details did not unfold exactly as the scriptures describe. But what matters more is this: the message of justice, of compassion, of responsibility toward one another. Love your neighbor as yourself. Leviticus 19:18. Just a short sentence, yet powerful enough to shape an entire vision of a humane society. These values transcend borders, languages, and religions. They speak to the deepest longing of the human heart to live in a community that is just and full of love. Whether or not you believe in their divine origin, you are still living in a world shaped by these principles. And maybe that is the most important thing. Not where these ideas came from, but how we choose to live by them today. How will you apply these values to your own life? That is the journey we are all walking, no matter what we believe. If you found these thoughts worth pondering, leave a comment. I would love to hear your perspective. If you know someone wrestling with questions of faith, of justice, or of morality, share this video with them. And if you want to keep exploring ancient stories with modern eyes, subscribe and stay with me. Because sometimes a new commandment begins with a single conversation.